Just I do have to leave at 10 to 11 because I've got Joint Commission in Partnership Executive.
Absolutely, not a problem. We're going to do questions straight after Neena's session.
Great, thank
so
you.
it should be about 10:30, and then you might just miss sort of the wrap up for Brian's, but if you have any questions, just send them through to us. Donna will get them answered.
Thank you.
Okay, so morning and welcome to today's session. So this is the third that we are running in this series, and this morning is an opportunity to meet two of our tutors who are going to give you an introduction to two of the master's level modules which form part of the diploma. If I know you weren't with us, Donna, I think you were, John, but if anyone on the recording missed last week's session, which covered two of our other modules, you can watch it back on the One NHS Finance website.
Okay.
I'm Becky Vine. I'm the Senior Programme Manager for the South West Regional Finance Academy, and I'm being joined today by Neena Vivash, who's on with us now, and Brian Stables, who's going to join about 10:30, and they're two of our Academy tutors. We won't go over 60 minutes today, and we're going to do Q&A with Neena after her presentation and with Brian after his. If you think of any questions as the guys are talking, then feel free to just put them in the chat box rather than kind of waiting until the end. And because we're recording this session, if you would prefer not to be on camera, then you're very welcome to turn your video off. It's completely up to you. So we'll get started then. So over to you, Neena.
Hi, good morning, Donna and John. Nice that you joined us today. I start off really by introducing myself a little bit. Lots of information on this slide, but I'm not going to go through all of it. Oh, we've got somebody else joining us. Shall I pause for a moment?
Just Leanne. Morning, Leanne.
Hi, Leanne. We're just starting an introduction.
Morning. I'll be on time for one of these. I promise one day.
So L706, supporting quality care with patient level costing. I'm module leader and tutor for. So a little bit about me and my career. So I am SEMA qualified of many years, and I've got a few other qualifications as well. The other one that's probably kind of interesting is that I finished my fellowship program for teaching at higher education. So slightly different maybe to some of the other tutors you might meet, that I've got a bit of a teaching qualification as well. So you might find a little bit of difference in the way that I do things. My career started off working for companies like Rumpel Aurora, which is pharmaceuticals, Christian Dior, Southeast Water, moved from finance into strategy, and then I moved into management consultancy. I was really specializing then in performance management and activity-based costing, which if any of you know anything about patient level costing, is basically what patient level costing is based on in terms of calculation is based on ABC. So for you non-finance people, it's an accounting technique, if you like, or costing technique. But if you're new to the course, we go through all of that. So that's kind of my specialist area, which obviously makes a lot of sense as to why I'm leading this particular module. Bellis Jones Hill, I was management consultant at, and then became their CEO, and we really worked very closely with the Department of Health and Monitor in the early days of what was originally service line reporting. So the kind of 5 vanguard organisations that provided service line reporting and PLIX solutions. It was a bit of a beauty parade that was conducted by Department of Health, by Monitor, by HFMA, to select those 5 providers, and Bellis Jones Hill was one of those 5. So we were very early doors involved in the shaping of what is today's patient level costing. So quite a close, long relationship, if you like. So we've worked with a lot of NHS trusts, acutes and mental health predominantly is where I've worked in designing and helping them implement their solution, and also develop what is now the new kind of costing standards, not directly, but it's through that group of acute trusts, etc., particularly for acute mental health, where we've been involved in, and how that's shaped up. So that's a little bit about myself and my background, specifically to do with patient level costing. next on slide wise is really my relationship with HFMA. So HFMA said started my relationship really on the corporate side, being on the other side, being a provider of solutions to the NHS. So you know, we've been exhibitors at HFMA conferences, involved in the costing standards group, but from a provider of services side. So you know, a little bit arm's length. So seen it from that side of things in terms of a solution provider. But I've done lots with HFMA Academy, involved from the very start of the level 7 MBA qualification. I have written some of the content for this particular module, and I've taught on a number of the other modules, as well as for some of the NAPC stuff as well. So personal effectiveness and leadership, I've worked with Brian on, who you'll speak to next, super guy. So that's kind of the teaching side, academic side. I also appear at some of the conferences occasionally. I've chaired some of the costing conferences. I'm going to be at the summer conference this year doing something online on resilience. And they also have bite size, so lots and lots of involvement on the academy learning side of things, where I've done a kind of session, lunchtime session on lean previously, which Becky's very kindly kind of organised for me in the past. So lots going on with HFMA, lots for you to get involved in as well, I should say. So, you know, whilst even though you kind of might come this part to do with the module, actually you'll see the tutors involved in other places, but there's also other things for you to get involved in as well. And say bite size, really good way of kind of supplementing knowledge as well. So that's my kind of involvement, past and present, with HFMA themselves, and they're a brilliant team, great to work with, by the way. So just put that plug in there. But they are. It's why I've stayed so long, I think. So why level 7? So I think this is quite important, and you've probably heard some of these already with the other tutors, but I'm going to give you my spin on level 7 and how I see it from somebody that's worked in the corporate world quite significantly, is kind of familiar with the NHS from that perspective. And when I first joined HFMA and knew that they were developing the MBA, you know, really for me, the way I think about all of the students that we have is that we are really building skills for the requirements of future leadership. And that's really how I set the agenda out, that it is about improving your skills for the sustainability of the NHS and the leadership that we're looking at for the future of the NHS. So it's about taking that forward. The level 7 MBA, and not just at HFA Academy, but you know, at university level, is about not having the perfect right answer. It's about finding the solution that works for the NHS, for your organisation, for your problem. And for me, it's around that skill to be able to assess and evaluate the situation, to find evidence-based solutions that are known to work, but also to synthesize and create new ideas and new solutions and try them out. And that to me is what level 7 is about. It's about pushing the boundaries. It's about leadership, but it's also about leading in new ways. The NHS is super complex. And we've got ongoing challenges, you know, not just financial pressures, resource pressures, but also balancing across, you know, these pandemics. You know, this morning it's all about polio. You know, dealing with this very changeable, sometimes quite unpredictable environment, more frequently than we'd like. And so, you know, building skills, leadership skills, to be able to manage in that is really, really quite key. So that for me is my, you know, why I think it's just so important, if you've got the time and the capacity and the motivation to do the MBA, there's a huge amount to be gained. And certainly the people that I have spoken to, students that have come back, have said, you know, even from single topic sessions, sometimes will come back and say, look, do you know what, I tried that, or that's got me thinking in a really different way, or it's broken down some barriers for me. And particularly with something like PLIX, which has been going on for quite a while, has challenges in embedding and engagement. You know, people are kind of saying, look, we can find some solutions here. So Plex, and it's not Plex, it's patient level costing, but it's about supporting quality of care. It's about optimizing utilization of our resources. And patient level costing is one of the tools that fits into how we're going to make the continue to make the NHS more efficient, and how we actually manage the challenges that are ever pressing around financial pressure, economic pressure for us. So, you know, how do we do more for less? And Plex is a key strategic tool in that. So, you know, what we talk about when we're looking at this module is, I'm not necessarily teaching you how to calculate a Plex module. That's really for the solution providers to do that for your teams in detail. But we do gain an understanding around why patient level costing is important, why it's been introduced, and about how costs work and operate. So we do some technical stuff around that in the first few weeks. But it's also about what are the challenges for implementation, how can it help us get better insight into operationally how your organisations are working, how we can get insight into working better as a system as well. And we kind of look at PLC being implemented across the system base as well. So we're not just looking at it now on your locality or your own organisation, a single organisation, but looking at it across the whole system. So looking at community, looking at ambulance, but also how that might operate with interaction between primary and secondary care. We're looking at challenging what works well, what hasn't worked well, and you know, how do we make some how can we provide better solutions? What other tools can we bring in to Plex to give us better information? So that's about the benefits of Plex and the challenges around Plex. And more specifically on the challenges around Plex is around data gathering, the quality of information that we currently have. How do we improve that quality? And also, if we want to be successful, how do we engage the larger or the wider organisation with the information? Because actually, it's not the finance teams that make change, it is the clinical teams that make the change. So if we don't have them involved, then you know that no change happens. It just becomes a national mandated reporting requirement that we complete. So the Plex, the quality of supporting quality of care is really key to this module, because it's not just about how we calculate Plex, it's about actually making it something that makes positive change within your organisations. So I hope that makes sense. I've sort of talked for quite a while there. So how does it actually look? What does it actually look like over the 10-week period? Well, we have 10 topic weeks. Weeks 1 to 4 I've put in as under costing. So it's actually weeks 1 to 3 that are technically a bit more costing related. So it's about understanding the fundamentals of how costs work and how costs behave. So that's covered in weeks 1 and 2. You know, what's the principles around costing? Why is costing important in organizations? And how, you know, how do things like overheads work, direct costs work, that type of thing, for those of you that are in finance, have got some finance background. And then week 3 is looking at the volumes of data and activity data that we require to put all of this together, to put the PLC together. And then week 4 is a bit of a transition week. It starts to talk about how we're bringing that costing information together, but also who are we bringing it forward to? Who owns the data? Who records the data? Who are the stakeholders involved? So the first 4 weeks are really about getting to grips with the costing side of things. We then move into more of the kind of soft skill side of things in weeks 5 to 7. We start to look at how we engage with clinicians, what types of information are really useful in practice, how do we start to embed and engage others, and what sorts of information can we provide that links our cost data to outcomes that patients value. Okay, and clinicians value. So we start to look at those things in weeks 5 to 7. So a bit more of the soft skill side. And then in week 8, we start to look at making decisions using the information. So how do we start to make changes to process improvement? How do we start to deliver some of the initiatives around productivity and efficiency? And how do we balance all of those things against making sure we're maintaining if or improving quality of care? So it's a bit more operationally based usage and application in weeks 8 to 10. So that kind of gives you an overview of the module itself between those 10 topic weeks. Hopefully that's kind of clear. And then finally, really, before I kind of go into a bit of Q&A, is what does the learning environment look like? So this is really me setting out some expectations. So turning up promptly is quite important. So I don't mind if you're 2 minutes early, that's fine. But us starting on time is always quite good, because I find every week it's an hour and a half long in terms of a live session, and it takes up, we tend to take up the whole hour and a half. But before I talk specifically about live sessions, you probably know this if you attended some of the others previously. There's 10 topic weeks, and each week for each topic there's activities to do and reading to do, and sometimes there's videos to watch. Now for this particular module, it's really stripped back, and I'm really enjoying the way we put it together now. So there's generally one discussion forum topic, so one question that I will put up each week that I really encourage you all to talk about on the discussion forum, exchange ideas. It's really important that we do that blended learning. The opportunity to network is really quite key for us, and discussion forums are a way of doing that. You've also on the online got your reflective journal. Now you can do this using the online journal, or you can keep your own personal notes. But again, it's quite good week on week to make some notes. It helps with the assessment. I give you quite a lot of kind of tips and tricks around each topic week and how you might want to use certain elements for your assessment. So it's just a place for you to store some of your own notes, is the reflective journal. So you can choose to do it online, or you can choose to just keep your own notes, but I really encourage that. Occasionally I'll make an announcement about something that I want to draw your attention to, whatever that might be. It might be administrative, or it might be to do with the module itself. You've also got in the e-learning your resource library. You've got all of your reference lists and reference links that go straight into accessing key documents. So, and in the resource library, you've got tips and tricks of, how to study, reminders if you haven't studied for a long time, as well as access to how to do Harvard referencing, access to all of the references, plus additional research academic material that you might have. So I've put that under the also, but that's where you access all of those things, is through that ebook learning environment. The live sessions, I ask you to prepare one particular activity again for the live session. I encourage a lot of discussion in the live session. I encourage you to have your mics on. I like people to participate, interrupt, ask questions. That networking is really, really important for us to get that synergy. What is a good fit solution, but also to have a chance to talk to different people from different organisations. The current cohort that I've got, 50% are clinicians and 50% are non-clinicians. And I've got, of the 50% non-clinicians, I've got people from prison services, I've got people from primary care, I've got people from acute trusts. You all bring something really different to that discussion. And if you want a chance to talk to clinicians or exchange ideas with clinicians, come and join the live sessions, because that they're there and they're available to talk to. So you can get a really good idea of how they think and how they're seeing things. And we're seeing more and more clinicians joining this particular module. So I'm delighted, because I've been doing this module for quite a few years now, and I'm delighted to see so many now involved. So they're really understanding that this is something that they should be engaging in, and they're really interested to learn a lot more about it and take it forward. So one of the big things about, again, this level of study is that networking. You get a new group of people that you can access and meet. You know, you can meet offline or on WhatsApp, you know, whatever you like. So please take the opportunity to do that. There are 2 study breaks generally for each module, and in the first study break you get a chance to do a formative assessment. I strongly encourage you to do that and have a go at that assessment. So I'm going to talk about assessment though in a moment, so we could flip forward on the slides, I think, if that's okay. Thank you. So assessment is measured against learning outcomes. It's the same for all modules, and we will give you those learning outcomes at the beginning. I'll remind you through each of the 10 topics, what they are and how they relate to the topics. But you just need to remember that when you're writing the assessment, what we're demonstrating the assessment is how you're demonstrating to the assessor how much you've learnt against those learning outcomes. So each week we have some learning outcomes. So if it's an activity data week, for example, you might be asked, you know, we're kind of getting you to understand the activity data that's needed, evaluate the challenges, issues about accessing that activity data would be the learning outcomes from that week. Okay, they will map onto the overall assessment learning outcomes as well somehow. So you know that so we'll, you know, that's what you're going to be assessed on, is have you achieved some of these learning outcomes or not. So the assessment's based against learning outcomes. So I introduced them in week 1 to you, so you're familiar with them all the way through. Midweek, midway, so week 3, 4, you're asked to volunteer. It's a voluntary thing to participate in the formative assessment. It's just 500 words. I strongly encourage you to attempt a bit of the main assessment. That's how I like to work. So you attempt a bit of the main assessment, and you get an opportunity to get feedback from me. And particularly if you haven't done study for a long time, or if you've never studied at level 7, it's an ideal opportunity, because level 7 is different. It is about your personal research. There is no right or wrong answers at level 7. Level 7 is about how good are your arguments and where's your evidence in terms of what you're putting in there. So it's not about stating opinions. It's about proving those opinions. So it's a really different way of study. So I strongly encourage that formative, even if you know, do a few bullet points. Not that it's difficult to give feedback on bullet points, but even if you only do 300 words, I'd rather see something. It's always good to get some feedback. Now, the assessment from here has up till now generally been a case study, an essay. So you get a choice of essays and you choose one that you'd like to write, and then there's a case study, and you're asked to do kind of 3-4 PowerPoint slides to accompany it on performance measures, that type of thing. Now we are changing that, so more than likely, if it goes through all the approvals in time and depending on when you join, assuming that you do join, it's going to be in the future, or in the near future, moving to something that's far more valuable for patient level costing, which is to do a PowerPoint presentation with report notes. So it's still 3,000 to 4,000 words. That's what the notes will be. The PowerPoint presentation will be about sort of 20 odd slides. So you're still writing reports, still doing it in academic style, but the benefit of that is that we're going to help you also with an additional skill of, look, how do I make my information engaging to clinicians? How do I get people on board with patient level costing? And where are my arguments for that? So it's a double skill that you're getting on this particular module, because that's quite a key thing with patient level costing is engaging people, getting stakeholders on board, because this is not just a finance run project, this is an organizational run project. So it's more than likely going to be that type of report, and in addition to that, a small voice recording of you actually delivering some of that presentation, so a 10-15 minute voice recording as well. So that's what to anticipate. You don't have to be brilliant at PowerPoint. It's not about what's on the PowerPoint slides per se. It's not about making them pretty. It's about, you know, the messages across those. So a little bit daunting, a little bit different, but very, very exciting as well. I'm really excited that we're kind of moving forward in that way. And I think that's me done, and I'm ready for any questions if you have any
Brilliant.
at all.
Thank you, Neena.
Pleasure.
That was a fantastic overview, and certainly an area, patient level costing, that's close to my heart personally, and it's yeah, such an important area. So yeah, that was a fantastic overview. Does anyone have any questions for Neena? Yep, John.
Yeah, thanks, Neena. It's good, isn't it? There's lots of variety in there, even in the kind of forms of assessment. I think on the live session you mentioned about the live example. Can you just say a bit more about that? Is that something that comes from us in our workplaces and day-to-day stuff, or do we get that something to explore from the clinician side, or
yes,
how does that one work?
Yeah, great question. So on the live sessions, I encourage you to speak to each other. So we will take a discussion point, and what I like to do is hear from you. So sometimes people will say, look, I've got experience of X. And then you can have a discussion about it, and the clinicians will feed into that discussion as well. So we have that, you get a bit more of an opportunity, if you like, to evaluate from different perspectives about a particular area. So each week I will ask you to prepare something or be prepared to discuss something. So it's based on the ebook activity, so it'll be an area that we've learned about in that week, but I really encourage you to talk about it. And for me, that's the value of the live sessions, is that discussion, because you can read everything in the ebook, you can watch videos, you can learn all the technical stuff and all the academic stuff, but actually trying to discuss the practicalities of it, how it's applied, and how people, it is what the live sessions bring. So,
Okay, so
I'm not presenting at live sessions. I present a little bit, but I really encourage you to talk about the topic in that week.
brilliant. So it works in a similar way to an action learning set a little bit then.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And Donna?
Yeah, thanks. That was a really helpful starting point for me. Obviously, I'm feeling a little bit being a commissioner, because actually I work across the social care element as well. And obviously with the ICS and all of those things, actually, it is about that greater integration. And I just wondered, I'm hoping that there'll be an opportunity for me to do a bit of exploratory stuff around how we engage with, another organisation that has to work within the health environment, because I'm responsible for the community contract, community health and mental health contract, but equally, the local authority contributes a significant amount of money into that contract, and that straddles both acute and secondary care. So I'm just sort of sitting here thinking, well, how does that work in my world, and whether there'll be an opportunity for me to bring that as as an emerging
100%. I think you'd be such a great value actually to the group, in the way that the clinicians are, in the way that the prison services are, because you will bring something different that others don't have access to, and vice versa. You can exchange. We are moving towards system. It is a discussion, and there are HFMA are already producing a number of papers on how things are moving forward currently and the challenges that are being experienced. So, we've started to introduce that this time into the module, as much as we've got available to us academically, which isn't a huge amount at the moment because it's still early doors. But I think it's a hugely important discussion, Donna, and I think you'll find that a lot of people sit on the ICSs from their different various organisations are involved. So, yeah, absolute asset. I think that's one, again, it's a great thing about all of the modules, is that you've got such a cross-functional group coming together to talk, and they see a lot of value in that. They see a lot of value. If I'm really honest about one thing, which is, it's the clinicians actually are great when they're there, but they can hop in and out a bit. I've had them join from A&E department waiting for the next emergency to come in, or from the train going home. So they're really participative when they're available. Yeah. Good. Someone else has got a dog. That's it.
Yeah, sorry, I will just share this. My neighbour's just converted her garage into a dog grooming. So my puppy, who's got a very big boy bark, but he is only a puppy, is every hour on high alert because all these different dogs keep walking past our gate. So,
Brilliant for your working environment. No problem at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know we've got a few other people on the call as well. So just a last chance for any questions for Neena, because I think she is going to have to head off before we finish. No? Okay. In which case, thank you again, Neena, so much. And Brian, who has joined us for that last bit of your session, Neena. I will hand straight over to you, if that's okay, Brian.
Good morning to you and good morning to everyone. Welcome to this course, which has the catchy number M1, and the title is Personal Effectiveness and Leadership. And just picking up from Donna's point earlier, this doesn't really apply to finance and non-finance. We hope to get commissioners and providers. We hope to get clinicians and non-clinicians on it. This is all about you, how you can become more effective as a leader. And in the groups that we've had so far, we've had a wonderful mix of people that all come from slightly different areas, but they all share one thing, which is wanting to improve the skill base and understanding of how to be a more effective leader. So that's what this course is all about. A little bit about me on the first slide. You see quite a lot of private sector experience. Another chartered management accountant. Apologies for that. You've been surrounded by them this morning. In the NHS, as you can see, I've been very fortunate. I started as a non-executive in the days of primary care trusts, which some of you might remember back in 2002, when they morphed. In Wiltshire, we had the wonderful case that we had the 232nd worst performing primary care trust, then merged with the 234th worst performing primary care trust. And then someone in their infinite wisdom handed in another poorly performing primary care trust, and that became NHS Wiltshire. I think that was in 2005, I think. I went to the other side, as it were. I was very fortunate to be chair of the Royal United Hospitals Bath NHS Foundation Trust for 9 years, and I'm currently just starting a second term with Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Partnership Trust. We do love our short organisation titles, don't we, in the NHS? So I've had great advantage of seeing most aspects, working in primary care with HFMA, working on the commissioner side from PCT, and also quite a bit now experience of both acute and mental health care. Also in the NHS, I do quite a bit of work with NHS providers, doing their board level training courses and the Governwell training for Foundation Trust governors. And I'm also a specialist advisor with CQC, but I only inspect acute hospitals and mental health trusts, so don't worry too much. If we can move on to the next slide. It says here I've been working with HFMA since 2017. I've suddenly realised actually that I think I went to my first HFMA event back in 2010, shortly after I became chair at the Royal United Hospitals in Bath. And I've been to countless quarterly chair meetings and networks, and also when they're short of people, I have the opportunity to chair some of those networks from time to time. But I've been working on this side, if you like, with 2017, when in cooperation with the National Association of Primary Care, we developed the forerunner of this course, particularly to help upskill practice managers in GP practices in skills of personal effectiveness and leadership. That module, as you can see, has now been delivered to 11 cohorts. I think we're just finishing or just finished on Tuesday our 12th cohort, and somewhere heading for around 350 learners. So the forerunner to this course has got a great pedigree. And as Neena was sharing earlier, on our current cohort, we got a lovely mixture of people from GP practices. Some have come from the commissioning side, We've got, I think, 3 or 4 GPs out of a group of 15, and it does give a wonderful opportunity for people to interact with the different skill base and different areas. So for me, although it's not on these courses, module specification, the interaction that we try and give time to all of the learners on the course is almost worth as much as the academic in inverted commas content that it has. And you can see that I've also written level 4 and a few of the bite-sized courses you can access on the ESR portal. So a little bit of an introduction to the course. You can see there in that first paragraph that if anything, a direction of travel in the NHS is things are getting more complicated, not easier. We need more, particularly professional skills and leadership characteristics. Multiple and competing demands and priorities. That complexity is probably going to increase, if anything, as the integrated care systems come into statutory being in just over a week's time. We know that Treasury is sitting on the back of Department of Health and Social Care, so we need to be very much aware on our effective use of public finance and resources. And as leaders, whether we are years and years of experience or new to leadership, we need to have a raft of skills that give us the ability to make things happen. We need to be looking for new approaches, and we particularly need to be looking for innovation so we can continue to make the most of the limited resources that we have. Talk about the need to work at increased pace and scale. So again, it's all about leaders adapting, and hopefully during the tenure of this course, we'll give you a few ideas to think about and a bit of a toolkit that you can use just to help you look at leadership in slightly different ways and hopefully become more aware. We're hoping that you will gain a higher level of self-awareness and you will look at a number of approaches to personal effectiveness and leadership. But as Neena's already said, this is very much a level 7 course. As we get into the meat of the course, you will find that there's no right answers. There's lots of different facets, but hopefully we'll just give you some ideas of areas where you can think of, yeah, that bit might be useful. I can use that and I can become more effective as a leader in my local part of the health economy. So I think the next slide, we're looking a little bit at the structure of the course itself. Very similar to the L701 that Neena's just taken you through. We run over 10 topics. Each topic lasts a week. And as you can see from the third bullet point, there's an Academy Live session at the end of each topic. Very similar to Neena's course, we run those in a very interactive way. There'll be a little bit of me covering the slides of what I think are the key learning points for that particular topic, but I use a lot of polls, I use a lot of breakout rooms, encourage people to get together, discuss feedback ideas, because yes, you'll do some learning from the ebook, but it's also very important that you learn from each other as well. To support that, I always encourage a very active discussion forum. There'll be sort of topics at the end of each activity where you can post your own ideas, and I would encourage you to share with other learners. And we also use the reflective journal, so you can jot ideas down there, which might be useful either in the future or for your assessment. And again, the Academy Live sessions, they will run on a Tuesday evening. We run from 7:30 to 9 p.m. We always run to time, mainly because I got quite a short attention span, so they'll only last an hour and a half. And every session is recorded. We do recognise that stresses and strains in the NHS. There'll be some weeks that you can come, other weeks that you can't come. Course is totally flexible. You can access the ebook at any time. And if you can't make a particular Academy Live session, then you're welcome to listen to the recording, and you have full access to the tutor. If you've got any questions that comes up as you work through the course, we would encourage you to have a conversation with your tutor rather than let it fester or worry. Expected study time is around 10 hours per topic. That can be a little bit flexible. You've got a full guided self-study. All of the ebooks contain all of the learning activities and the links. You don't have to look outside the content of the ebooks. You're welcome to do additional research if you find a particular area that's of interest. But as I say there, it's the opportunity for me to engage with peers and tutors in the discussion forums, as well as the interaction you have in that weekly hour-and-a-half slot. And as I say in that second bullet point, you get a week's break after the first 4 topics, and then we get another week's break after week 7, and then you get a good 4 weeks to actually prepare for your assessment after we finish the topic 10 and the 10th teaching week. And as it says there, dedicated support, the tutors will guide and support you through the module. That's me, so hi. On our next slide, please, Libby. So let's just run through the 10 topics just to give you some idea of what they cover. The first week, topic 1, Introduction to National Context and Models of Care. That's very much the opportunity to get everyone onto the same page, give you the opportunity just to refresh your memories, particularly to see the evolution of where we get to and the long-term plan that we currently have that was published in January 2019. We do have quite a lot of reading in the first week just to make sure everyone's on the same page, but the whole crux of this course is about leadership. So if we ask you to flick through the key elements of the NHS long-term plan, for example, we're only interested in you looking through the implications for leadership, because this course is all about leadership. You will not be tested on the content of the long-term plan, and you certainly don't have to read all 167 pages of it. The 4-page executive summary is quite sufficient because that clearly highlights the challenges to leadership. In the second week, then we start looking at leadership theories and approaches. I'm sure we all have a default leadership style, but what we try and do in that second week is look at some leadership styles that we think might be appropriate for leaders in the NHS. So we start by looking at what's called the 6 leadership styles of an academic called Goldman from a few years ago. We go up to look in a bit of more detail about the compassionate leadership style and the work of Professor Michael West out of Oxford. And particularly, because the course is brought right up to date, we look at aspects of system leadership, because all of us, whichever part of the health economy we work for, and it's great to see we got a split already in this room of commissioners and providers, the key challenges for leadership are pretty much the same, whether you're a commissioner or a provider. So we look at some of the leadership styles that might be appropriate to the new way of working, particularly in the NHS. And through the assessment, we would encourage you perhaps to try a different leadership style approach and then evaluate how that actually works in practice, whether it might be more useful or you might think it's a load of rubbish. And then the lovely words of critical evaluation says you can both share the pros and the cons of a particular concept and then write about it. Topic 3, we introduce you to stakeholder management, and particularly the power interest matrix as a way of looking at how is best to interact with our stakeholders, particularly as we move into systems. We'll look at some concepts relating to power. Where does power come from? What do I need to be aware of as a leader in terms of power? And then we'll link that to a broad discussion on ethics in leadership. Week 4 is a bit of a catch-up week. We sort of do a recap on all of the concepts that we've covered in the first 3 topics. We look a little bit more at some of the academic writing that's starting to come through literally over the last year, 18 months, on effective leadership in systems, look to understand that a bit more. And that's the week when we really pause for breath and just start to look ahead to the assessment, so you've got that in the back of your minds as you work through the remaining 6 weeks. We then reward you with a week off between topics 4 and 5. So topic 5, as you can see there, leadership competencies, behaviours and managing change. We look at some work that the NHS Leadership Academy did 7 or 8 years ago now. We look at the aspects of the healthcare leadership model, see what guidance that can give to us as leaders to be more effective. We look at the work of two American academics, a couple of guys called Kouzes and Posner, who wrote a book, I think back in about 28 to 29, about exemplary leadership, to see what academics say about the tools and techniques we can use to be really effective leaders. And then the third of that particular topic 5, is all about managing change. So we give you some concepts and some tools and techniques to help you hopefully run change projects as effectively as you possibly can. Topic what's that, 6 we're up to now. We look at motivation. We look at both individual motivation in topic 6, and we look at team motivation in topic 8. So we look at motivation, and we look at things like the Thomas Kilner and ACAS booklets to help you give, again, more tools and techniques for handling conflict. So in the first 4 or 5 weeks, we've more looked about leadership styles and what's an appropriate leadership style. What can we learn about our own leadership to become more effective in the current NHS dynamic? And then topics sort of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 are more about sort of tools and techniques. So we look at change management. As I said, in topic 6, we look at motivation, conflict handling. In topic 7, we look at effective communication, effective presentations, and we spend a bit of time actually doing a live negotiation just to learn a few skills about negotiation techniques, particular interest for both commissioners and providers, I'm sure. As I said, in week 8, we look a lot more at motivating, managing and leading teams. We also look at some academic definitions of when is a team not a team, and we look at some of the work of, again, another American academic called Lencioni. We look at dysfunctional teams, what stops teams from working effectively, what can we learn for that for our own situation. And then week 9, topic 9, is the sort of the last bit of tools and techniques, if you like, related to leadership. We look at approaches, as you can see there, to influencing cultural and political awareness. No problem, Donna. Thanks for the note. And in week 10, we just come back and think, okay, we've done all this learning over the last 9 weeks. We've had a great time discussing it in our groups in the Academy live sessions. But week 10, we look at you. So let's look at some tools and techniques to help work out how you can perhaps manage yourself a little bit more effectively as a leader. And we talk about some tools and techniques for increasing your leadership confidence, and particularly tools and techniques for leadership and management resilience in the NHS, which I think is particularly appropriate now. So that's just a quick canter through the content of the course. It's all about you. It's all about leadership. Although I'm an accountant, there's no finance in there. If we can go to the next one. And this is really sort of just a checklist. We'll go through all of this at the start of the course. But these are the learning outcomes. Because it's level 7, we're looking at this critique. We want you to critically analyze everything. So we don't want you to describe your experience. We want to explain what you think has happened, where you think a concept worked particularly well, where you think a concept hasn't worked particularly well. What's the evidence for that, and how can you use that in your future leadership journey? So we can see there that we'll be looking at learning from the effectiveness of leadership theories, competencies, behaviours and change. Again, evaluating how leadership skills around team leadership, motivation, conflict, negotiation, etc., link into your particular healthcare organisation. We will have looked at leadership across the range of healthcare services, talking a bit about culture and particularly the new structure as we walk into integrated care systems in 8 days' time. And then you can see the last point about helping you understand culture, political astuteness, confidence and resilience. I think the next slide talks a bit about the assessment. This is a bit of a change, and it's quite exciting for me. You get 2 parts to the assessment for this new course, Person Effectiveness and Leadership. The first part, which is 70% of the marks, is undertaking a critical reflection of your leadership and personal effectiveness and how it's affected your team and other staff. So that's 70% of the words. We're looking for around 2,500 words. And here you take a project or an event that's happened during the course of the leadership course. You look at the thoughts that you've got about how good your personal effectiveness as a leader has been, and you look at how the impact of some of the changes that you've done or how you've run that particular project over the 10 or 12 weeks, how's that impacted on the rest of your staff. You use then concepts to explain what worked well, what didn't work so well, and then you look at the areas where you can actually improve and do something differently in the future. And the organisation of your choice, you can do your own organisation, which is usually the easiest, or you can do another one. But it's all about what you have done, trying to put the concepts and the learning from the 10 weeks in the course, what you've learned, trying to put that into practice, and then critically evaluating just means explaining the pros and cons and how that's affected your team and other staff you might interact with. And the second part of the assessment, which is 30% of the marks, and we're looking for a presentation of about 1,500 words, is to prepare a video. And probably the easiest way now is to use the video feature of PowerPoint. And as you can see there, it's giving a TED talk about 1,500 words, probably only 7 or 8 minutes. There is a limit of 15 minutes, but it's giving a talk based on your reflective experience above, and that's where we ask you to bring in some of the communication skills that we were looked at, I think, in topic 10. Engage your audience and explain to your audience how your experience might encourage both yourself and others to learn from the future. So for me, it's quite an exciting, it's a mixture of sort of 2,500 word essay, but then the opportunity to show your enthusiasm in the form of a TED talk. I think that's probably it. So I'm very happy to go, Becky, into any questions.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, again, like Neena, that was a really wonderfully comprehensive overview of the module, and it looks like a really interesting one that's very, like you say, brings together anyone. It could apply to anyone working in any area of the NHS. So does anyone have any questions for Brian?
John, I could see your brain ticking.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. That was really clear. With this 70% project, I can immediately think of a few things, and inevitably there will probably be some new things as well. Is there anywhere where we can already see some of those things that people have used before? Some examples of how they brought that to life in their modules?
Simple answer to that, John, is no, because although we've had a similar assessment for the sort of the first 11 times we've run this course, we don't share them because purely leadership is such a personal thing, it wouldn't really mean much. So everyone sort of does all these bits and pieces. We'll start looking at the assessment in week 4. There's a lot of guidance. We've just agreed and will be published as soon as we publish the course a little bit later in the year, the full details of the assessment requirements. So we'd sooner that you focus on thinking about and sharing your own leadership experience, because it is so much a personal thing. We haven't seen any value in sharing any examples from previous people, because it really doesn't mean anything, because it's your leadership and how you think you've impacted others in your team. So as I say, John, it's that personal. But I'm sure in your situation, I see you with one of our local commissioners, because I do have a few roles in the Bath, Swindon and Wiltshire integrated care system. So
yeah, and also one of the reasons I asked was thinking of where the boundaries would be around it. So would we need to just do it on something within our own organisation or system, or whether we could do it on separate thing and go and research and learn a bit more about that, what's going on somewhere else potentially?
It's entirely your choice.
Yeah.
Most people do it for their own organisation purely because it's a bit easier and it's easier to engage stakeholders.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do a piece on how effective your leadership was and how you impacted others within BSW, I'm sure we'd find that extremely fascinating, although it might be difficult. Certainly over the next year as the integrated care systems actually sort themselves out in governance purposes. But yes, you can use any organisation, but most people choose their own, John, just purely for simplicity and for time.
Yeah, thanks.
Brilliant, thank you. Anyone else? I know that we've got Leanne and I think Yasmin on as well, so just a last chance to ask any other questions.
Brian, it's
Yes.
clearly a very a kind of personal submission that you have to make at the end, and I, for one, would probably struggle quite a lot with a TED talk. Not the most comfortable thing, definitely not comfortable in front of a camera. Is that something there might be some support with?
Yes, I mean, we're obviously there to support in all sort of circumstances. I mean, even in the simplest thing with a TED talk, I mean, you can almost do your PowerPoint slides and then we can just help you with the actual process of, you know, sort of flicking the record button and then sort of reading to your slides. But yeah, this is a bit of a new one for us, Leanne, so we'll both be going through the learning curve. But yeah, I mean, you know, I'm there and any other tutors that support this course, we are there to help you have a successful course. So we will make sure that there's a sufficient support to help you through all of that. The actual description on the assessment, I think it's a video similar in nature to a TED talk. So we're not asking you to walk on a stage. It's very much your personal review and your personal reflections on what you've done in the first part. So hopefully we won't make it too onerous for you. It won't be shown to anyone. Obviously, all of this is confidential between yourself and the HFMA assessor. If you're concerned about the TED talk for any particular reason, then we're always happy to have a discussion to find ways of actually doing it in a slightly different media, if that gives you a particular personal problem. Always happy to look at solutions at HFMA, not problems. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks, Brian.
Brilliant. Okay, well, if we don't have any other questions for Brian, I'll just say thanks again to both Neena and Brian for joining today and talking about their modules. And obviously thanks to the people who have joined us, and hello to anyone listening on the recording. So this is going to be recorded as well. It'll be up on the NHS Finance website for anyone to catch up on. And we're going to be running a session again next week. So next week we are going to be looking at 2 more modules. So making finance work in the NHS and tools to support decision making. And that's with Rachel Hardy and Paul Miller. So join us again next week if you want to find out about those modules, and yeah, look forward to welcoming you to future sessions, everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.